Morning, everyone. I'm going to call the monthly meeting of the Canaveral Port Authority Board of Commissioners, June 29th, 2022. And I would like everybody to stand for a pledge. And I've asked Commissioner Justice to lead us.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
At this time, I'd like to introduce our ambassadors that are here today. So if I call your name, please stand. Dennis Hepburn, Jessica Maxwell, and Bobby Sox. Thank you very much for your service, folks. Okay, the first item on the agenda now is the approval of the agenda. So the chair would entertain a motion.
So moved. Second.
Commissioner Justice made the motion, Commissioner Lloyd second. Any discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
The motion is approved. Next item is approval of the minutes of our meeting for last time.
So moved, Mr. Chairman. Second.
Any discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
It's approved by 5-0. Personal appearances. The aquarium update by Kevin. Okay, Kevin, we're ready for you.
Yep. Okay, and backwards when we're ready. Okay. Thank you, Commissioners. Appreciate the opportunity to be here today. We are excited to give you an update on the aquarium project. As you know, we've been having these discussions for the last few years, but I'll give a little background just to catch you up to speed on what we've been working on since we last got together. So, just to refresh everyone's memory of what we're looking to do, we are really looking to build a world-class aquarium. It's a fantastic site, as I'll show you again in a minute, as you well know. On this, and it's a conservation campus. It's a 14-acre site, which is really significant for aquariums and allows us to do a lot of things we couldn't do in a smaller space. It follows our model. As many of you know, Brevard Zoo has been independent from the very beginning, and part of our model is not only does it have to pay for itself, it has to pay for our programs. And so the economics of the project are something we revisit constantly. I'll be talking about that. Provide amazing experiences that really reflect the experiences at the zoo, as you might have saw. We ended up as the #4 zoo in the country this year in one of the major polls. So we continue to focus on that, and if you haven't seen lions yet, please come out and visit them. Although I tell people you can either call them cowardly lions or scaredy cats. They're 3 young boys, and they do get scared of their own shadow sometimes. And lastly, really become a high-profile ecosystem restoration center for the Indian River Lagoon. I'll talk a little bit about how that's continuing to evolve. But I will say this is really unique. I think this is the only aquarium I know that's really Brazilian pepper, things like that. We are entered into an option to lease and development agreement for approximately 14 acres of that site, as you see marked up the northern piece. Future development area obviously is under the port's control for whatever happens to the south, just to remind you. And our hope is to actually eventually develop the entire fringe with a boardwalk system so people can enjoy it and sort of activate that site as part of it. This is what the image looks like from the water. I've been out a few times, as you well know, on the water side. The depth there really varies on the day and the wind and the conditions in the Indian River Lagoon. But it is beautiful mangrove along there. South of there, there's a mangrove forest, which I believe the port owns, but leases to the city of Cape Canaveral, and they are developing a trail system in there as well. So you'll have this incredible sort of ecotourism site there coming along. And you know, when you stand on that site, as I've been many times, you actually can look up and you can see the cruise ships dwarfing you as they come across. So it's just an amazing experience, even though it's way, way far away from the bulkhead and on the other side of 528. And if you look at this, you'll see it reflects the same basic model of the zoo. It's a covered walkway, it's a trail with many experiences, but you're never more than 5 minutes away from the entrance. I'm not going to go through in depth the experience before, but I will show you a video at the end because you've heard that. I want to give you updates on where we are. But before we do that, I just want to remind you what we hope to change in the world. Our estimates is we're going with our most conservative estimates of 525,000 visitors a year. The zoo will probably break 500,000 visitors this year, so that's a very conservative estimate. But we'll educate and empower all those people. Fund lagoon and restoration projects at a major level. We've committed to the community at least $1 of every paid admission is going to go into Indian River Lagoon restoration. Through the National Estuary Program, I believe you're going to hear Dr. Dwayne DeFries right after me. So that will become one of the major funders. I think we'll be putting in a lot more. So the investment that you're making and we're making is going to come from generations to go. We really think we'll be a center for integrating restoration efforts because we're this visible place on the lagoon with facilities on the lagoon. We've talked to lots of researchers and how they're going to use us up and running. Jobs and dollars, just as you do here, important. Also really important for attracting human capital. As you know, our aerospace companies, their number one challenge is bringing in talent. Engineers really love aquariums. It's another quality reason to visit. And then really a source of enormous community pride. I've been here 18 years. Many of you have been here longer. I'm really proud to live in Brevard County. I go and brag about who we are to other parts of the world. I tell them, we're one of the engineering centers of the world, and people don't know that. And I feel like this is another way to put a stake in the ground, like the port, like the spaceport, like the airport. So update you on 3 parts of the process. First of all, design. We completed schematic design, which is about 30% of the detail at the end of 2021. We then held additional workshops with the arts community and with the restoration community, looking at our basic design, looking at opportunities. And we've gone through, as you know, when you do a new terminal, about 150 pages of blueprints, so to speak, and made some major changes. And I'm pointing out these changes because they reflect who we are and what we're doing. We added a 3rd floor to our coastal conservation hub because we simply did not have enough room for classrooms, meeting rooms, etc., all those things. We added a 2nd floor to our primary animal wellness facility because that is core to who we are. This is a major one. Over the last 2 years, we've committed to something I thought we would never say yes to, and that's because the community has come to us. We have started to invest in significant ways in seagrass restoration and in manatee work. And so that's really important to us in this community. You're all aware of the manatee provisioning that happened here this year. That happened through all the federal and state agencies. We're actually part of the groups behind the scenes supporting that, and we're now committed to manatee restoration and rehab. So if you recall, the beginning of the aquarium experience starts with a sea turtle healing center. Now you're sort of going to end your experience by a manatee rehab facility. We are the epicenter of manatees here in Florida, really. I would argue maybe the United States. Maybe Dwayne will argue with me. I think there's no more than the Indian River Lagoon. We don't have a restoration area. We don't have a rehab facility here. We max out. We end up driving manatees all over the state all the time. So that's now part of the design. It will be in there. And then we looked at things like safety and water usage, and we've added other consultants to make sure we use that most efficiently. And the last one I'm putting in because we redesigned our Ray exhibit to maximize that additional income that goes back to our model of self-sufficiency as we look at ways we're going to get out of it. Some changes, nothing dramatic, but it just makes it a much better facility, identifying things early in this process. So the next phase is design development. That will complete by the end of the year, and that's at about 50%. And that's when we take the really next hard look of costs, which are going to continue to creep up. Actually, lumber's come down, as we well know, as we go through. In terms of working with the port, the next big scene is site plan approval, and we're still working on the final lease line with the port, and we've got to clean up where we know the Department of Transportation lines in on that exit. So that's what's happening with design. Operationally, we're talking about our agreement with you is we need to break ground by end of September 2024. Our plan is to open 2 years later, and we're starting to put the pieces in place for that. It's a major shift organizationally, going from 1 campus to 2 campus. We have quite a few other zoos and aquariums who we can learn from, but we're going through the process right now. But the first thing we're doing is refining our income projections, taking a look at what our food and beverage income is going to be, our gift income, all of those things. Events is going to be a major piece, premium programs. So we continue to refine that. And I'm happy to tell you, even though, like everybody else, we've dramatically raised salaries, our projections keep getting better, not worse, as we look at the actual details. The number of people we can hold for functions. Anyone in aerospace, thank you for all those rocket launches, because that's going to be a huge source of income for us, and just pushing those out. And then we're looking at reviewing staffing structures and how we're going to be ready to have a staff in place and develop it along the way. So the operational piece is really critical to us too. So we're really looking 4 years ahead now as we start to work on that. And then finally, funding, which is probably what you're most interested in hearing about. Our goal for the campaign is $100 million. It's a mix of private, corporate, public. The largest, public piece has been from the TDC. We did get $500,000 last year from the state. We got just under $1 million this year. We actually officially launched our campaign in December of last year, so we're a little over 6 months into it. We have a capital campaign cabinet that spans 4 counties, and I'll show you that in a minute. And that's a big part of our process, is actually making this a regional attraction, not just a Brevard attraction. So we've held multiple events in Brevard County and Indian River County. Starting this fall, we'll be in Volusia and Orange County as well. And obviously, what it means to all of those places is all a little bit different. But we do believe this is a transformational project. So, for example, we are holding one of these events in Boston this summer. And that's because, the right whales that spend their winter here spend their summer there. The sea turtles go up there. Our manatees are going up there. It is all really literally connected. And of course, the number you want to see, we're currently at a little over $46 million committed. We are hoping to be at 50% at the end of the summer. The first 50% of the campaign, let me be clear, is the easiest 50%. But we're still feeling pretty good about our progress. This is our campaign cabinet. Actually, Linda May's in the room. Is one of our co-chairs. Many of you know Linda. She knows the port really well. It's a mix of folks from across the fishing industry, from across multiple counties. We're really proud to have them involved. We might add a few more people down the road, but it represents different constituencies, from Indian River County to Volusia to Orange. The recreational fishing industry is really well represented here. So just to give you a little sense of who's on our cabinet. And next steps, as you know, the deadline that we're working towards and we think we'll hopefully easily meet is the deadline we have with you, which is September 2024, to activate the lease and go into construction. Our TDC funding deadline is this year, so we're looking to move that deadline to match your deadline, and also seeking some additional dollars. If you're unaware of hospitality, and the TDC funding's going through the roof right now. Obviously, the future's a little uncertain, but we still feel good about that. And then cultivation in Orange and Volusia counties this fall. So that's where we are on the sort of major aspects of what we're working on. We have a little video to show you that walks you through the experience, and we're going to show that to you now. that's our vision. We are really excited to continue to work with the port on developing this, and obviously I'm open to any questions you might have.
Keith, if you're going, is the development going to be in phases or stages, and what would be
Great question.
phase one?
Everything we showed you in this video, with the exception of one thing, is definitely in the first phase. We have a second phase plan that's sort of deep ocean pelagic with additional sea themes. We'd love to have one of the space companies' recovery vehicles over your head. But we have some plans depending on where our funding is to move things to a different second phase. But there is a core experience, and our commitment is we don't want to open it with a diminished experience, because we've got to pay for itself. So pretty much everything you saw in this is in our vision for the first phase. We have a vision for a second phase, and it's staged so we can build it easily. That we have access construction-wise to build that second phase 3 to 5 years after opening if all goes well.
And with 40-some million in pledges, how much cash do you actually have in hand now?
I think, I'm trying to remember correctly, roughly 20 plus million. It's a 5-year campaign, so people's pledges come in. The state's money hasn't come in yet from this year, things like that.
Okay. Questions for Kevin? For Keith? Right.
As far as the agreement we have with the port, it's my understanding from speaking to staff that there's been some milestones that have been kind of set forth. Some of those things are like a survey, so
Right.
And defining the area that you're going to be kind of taking up. And so it's my understanding that some of those things have not been submitted to staff. So the first step in development is a survey.
Well, those are the lines I was referring to. The original lines we were given by port staff, which I said were rough. Turns out some of those sit on DOT rights of way. So we've been talking and working with port staff to just clarify that. We've had surveyors out there, but we don't know where the actual final lines that we got from what is shown doesn't match that sketch that I showed you. So that's what we've been talking to right now.
Yeah. So my question, a little more specifically, would be: Have you engaged with a civil engineering firm or a surveyor? Is that process underway, and have you spent any money on that?
Yeah, we've had surveyors out on the site doing complete survey. We just don't know where the line is, and we use the same civil engineer that you do, and they're talking. Right, we had a call from them yesterday. They've been on from the very beginning, and yes, the contracted, paid. They're working because they do work for you as well. They're working out those details. Yeah, I mean, we have the same concerns. We want to get the site plan done, completed. Theoretically, it's supposed to be in tomorrow. We've been going back and forth because those final lines, and it's not a lack of surveyor on the site. Yeah.
What's the timeline for trying to finalize what the property lines are?
Well, we were. There was a conversation back and forth. And I don't know a lot of details here, so I don't want to confuse you. Might be more. I know we've been talking to staff. I think very collaboratively to get that done. Yeah, we want that completed just like you do, Commissioner, and it's not from any lack of, I don't believe, of effort on either side. It's just the DOT lines didn't line up with what I think either of us thought were the actual property lines. That's my understanding of it.
Questions or comments?
I'll just say, thanks for the update. Again, at least from my perspective, you've got our commitment to move this thing forward and to get it right and to and support it and just start building when we can.
Yeah, we'd like to. And again, our apologies. We're equally anxious to get those final details worked out because our whole design is based on those final lines. So, thank you.
Okay. Any other comments for Keith? Or anyway. Okay.
Right. Thank you all for your support.
Thank you very much for the presentation.
Thank you.
Very informative.
Thank you.
Next item, Bob Musser is going to introduce our next speaker, Dr. Dwayne DeFries.
Good morning, Commissioners. Bob Musser, Senior Director of Environmental here at the Port. At your place setting there, you should have a copy of the Indian River Lagoon National Estuary Program 2021 report. With us today, I think you all know Dr. Dwayne DeFries, the Executive Director of the Indian River Lagoon National Estuary Program. He's going to give you an update on that, and also some additional details on what's going on with the lagoon. So with that, I will turn it over to Dwayne.
Morning, Doctor. Thanks for being with us today.
Good morning, Commissioners. It's great to be here. Sorry I stood you up a few meetings ago, but it is really good to be here in person. And thanks, Bob. I appreciate it. Just as a preamble, I couldn't be more excited about being part of this aquarium project. You know, I'm looking at billions of dollars worth of projects, and there's only a handful or so that you can say are truly transformational for the lagoon and the community. And that is one. So I'm fully engaged, fully committed, and I'm going to show you exactly how some of those connections are happening. You've got our annual report. I know you've got a christening to go to, so I'm going to roll through these slides pretty quickly to give you a big picture of what's going on, because a lot has changed since I was here last, including the federal manatee unusual mortality event that has changed the landscape of the players with way more federal engagement on my end of the world than we had previously. So just as a reminder, we are one of 28 national estuary programs dedicated by Congress in Section 320 of the Clean Water Act. What makes us really unusual is we have no regulatory authority. We operate under a business model called a management conference that brings together stakeholders from industry, from science, from our community, elected officials to come together to make decisions and ultimately move a lagoon from an impaired status to a healthy status. And we have been operating now as the IRL Council, an independent special district of Florida, since 2015. I want to remind everybody, because just recently I've kind of heard a lot of stories about what's going on with this system and why are we so different than other systems around the nation. Because we are narrow, we are thin, and you can see this in the map. We've got a watershed that is quite large, especially to the south, but where our landscape has totally changed. The problems we're seeing in the lagoon and the vulnerability in the lagoon is a natural vulnerability. Lagoons typically don't exchange with the ocean a lot, so the pollutants you put in stay in, the nutrients that you put in stay in, the fresh water that comes rushing down through our roadways ultimately change this system dramatically, much differently than we'll see with Chesapeake Bay or Puget Sound. So the scale and the vulnerability is much higher. And so our efforts to protect the system, once you have those plumbing problems, are also magnified. This is a kind of a detailed, but I wanted to just show you what the science. We have had a waterfall of scientific publications in the last 16 months that have actually detailed what's going on in this system over the last 10 years. We have a good handle on the last 10 years of harmful algal blooms, and this is how the science see it. You can see, from 1997 to about 2011, not much activity. And then you see all these colored spikes, different in the southern mosquito lagoon, northern IRL. Those are all different species that are blooming. That is also unusual for an estuary, because we're narrow, we're shallow, we've got these opportunistic harmful algal bloom species. Conditions get right, the nutrients are there, and here's the good news, and I got my fingers crossed. For the last 12 to 14 months, we have had the best water clarity we've seen in over a decade. A lot of that is weather oriented. We've been very dry over the last 14 months. You had a light tropical storm season. This could change tomorrow, so we are seeing some blooms over the last several weeks. But if we can continue the trend that we're on, we are starting to see seagrasses trying to come back. Clarity has been excellent, and we just wait every day to see how the system's going to surprise us. Manatee mortality, of course, has been a direct result of loss of seagrasses. This is also new data looking back all the way to 1943. Here's the bottom line. Seagrasses are now about 90% lost in the lagoon. We are going to have a very heavy lift restoring seagrasses, and the restoration of seagrasses and the protection of manatees is all about water quality. We're about to embark on a very high-risk, high-reward opportunity. Brevard Zoo's part of it. We're going to invest $2.5 million to build seagrass nurseries throughout the lagoon using federal infrastructure funds. We will not plant our way to success on this, but we may be able to accelerate seagrass recovery by planting. And we already have 6 test systems, working right now, 2 more coming in, and we will identify, we already have 5 providers who will build seagrass nurseries, and Brevard Zoo is one of them. The Manatee situation's not going away. And so when you lose carrying capacity, you lose your food resources, manatees are going to be stressed. You can see well over 500 deaths this year. I hope it doesn't hit 1,000 again, but we will be in this UME for quite some time. So quickly, we have a plan. The plan is comprehensive. It was adopted in 2019. We're already going to update it starting in about a year, but that plan focuses on the critical water quality, seagrass, and harmful algal bloom issues in red. But we are doing work in all of these 32 vital signs at some level, either with our program or with our partners. We also do concurrence documents to support that plan. And I'm going to just focus on one today because everybody wants to know how much. We have completed a strategy for financing the CCMP, which was a deep dive on trying to project costs. And you all know, I know you're dealing with it now. Cost projections from 12 months ago are no good today, and 24 months ago. So it's hard to do this, but we wanted a number. We have a communication plan in draft, a monitoring plan in draft, habitat restoration plan in draft. So we are beginning to build, the direction for all of our partners moving forward. And our funding story actually has been remarkably good. I want to remind you that you invested in us in 2016 with a $100,000 grant. If you go on our website, if you see any of our collaterals, including the annual report, all of that branding started with your investment. So I want to thank you. Those dollars that you invested in 2016 are expressed in everything we do now. And we've got a firm, Ideas out of Orlando, that are helping us. We've seen incremental funding increases at the federal level to our normal funds, very stable within our IRL Council. Here's the really good news as of about a month ago. The governor's budget this year was historic in the amount of funding for the Indian River Lagoon. Over $40 million for projects in Brevard County alone, over $70 million for the lagoon watershed. A year ago it was $53 million for wastewater. A year before that it was $25 million for mainly stormwater and some projects that Brevard Zoo had with clams. So we are seeing historic levels of state funding. Where we still need to do work is at the federal level. We are not funded, in my opinion, at the levels we need to be across the board from the feds, and we are working on that right now. We are updating the license plate after almost 30 years. You'll see that roll out for sale. We are now in control of that license plate. It was transferred from the Water Management District to us. Those funds go directly to the counties that the plate is sold. So stay tuned for that. We will issue another 5 competitive RFPs this fall. We do this every year. Typically put close to $1 million of local cost share grants on the table to our municipalities and our partners. The new news, though, is that when we start looking at where we've been, the leverage point is really high. So up to 2021, 139 projects completed, $9.9 million invested. On average, we range from a 1-to-1 match with our local partners to as high as over $6 to 1. So our local communities are stepping up. This is our cities, our counties. Everybody is invested in lagoon restoration. And here's the new news. We worked really hard for 2 years to place the NEP in the Federal Infrastructure Investment and Jobs Act. That was no small feat because we are a small program. So in that $1.3 trillion, we were able to line item, 132 million direct to the National Estuary Programs. That's going to bring 909,800 annually every year for the next 5 years. And last month, my board and the management conference dedicated 2.5 million of that 4.55 million to seagrass restoration centers, and Brevard County is going to have one of those with Brevard Zoo. And so we will be cultivating seagrasses in nurseries. So we've just became horticulturists, you know, on top of marine biologists. And this is what the centers look like. We anticipated this, you know, back in 17 and 18 and never imagined, you know, the aquarium coming online. And so the fifth partner in the seagrass nursery recovery will be a private company over on the west coast of Florida, Sea and Shoreline. We are negotiating those contracts as we speak. We are doing harmful algal bloom monitoring at a higher level than the last time I talked to you. So we've got long-term contracts to monitor harmful algal blooms now lagoon-wide. We're getting ready to add 2 new atmospheric deposition stations to add to the R1 because we do get nutrients from both dry and wet atmosphere deposition. And we are seeing projects everywhere. So if you hear on the street from citizens that nobody's doing anything, here are the numbers. In 2021, in addition to what we did within the NEP program, which was around 30 projects, 267 projects were underway lagoon-wide. We are collecting our data for the 22 annual report, and we've already identified 303 projects underway. So there's a lot of work at a lot of levels by a lot of people. We also have, and I wanted to make sure that everybody knows this who's listening, we provide free grant writing for anybody who wants to do a project and is seeking grant money for the lagoon. You can see some of the performance measures. I generally budget about $40,000 in that line item every year. I never spend it all. I would like that to start to get really active. So if any of you are looking for Indian River Lagoon grants, if you know where you're going, we will hand you a free professional grant writer. We pay for it. You don't have to worry about the contract, any of the paperwork, and they will write the grants. And the one I like the best is Brevard County's, the Stan Mayfield Working Waterfront. We spent $6,000 and they got a $1.49 million grant. So I'm going to finish with this. I've been asked, because I came from industry, you know, how much? And so we spent almost 2 years putting together 3 lines of evidence on what this might cost in the big picture of Indian River Lagoon restoration. And not any surprise to us, we're looking at $5 to $6 billion conservatively, and that includes wastewater, septic, you know, improvement on large and small stormwater projects. And that would equate to about $250 million annually. We have a list of over 1,000 projects in a queue. We haven't prioritized them, but we know when somebody asks, do you have a project? We have projects to move forward. As you all know, our current funding is insufficient to meet that $250 million need, although we are getting close this year. And the longer we wait, and I left this blank, the more it will cost. And so every year we don't get this job done, we are seeing incremental increases in costs, and in the last 2 years, more than incremental. And so this is what the list looks like. And so we're working with all our partners to actually, pair big projects with funding sources, and we'll continue to provide that service. But this document now, which has been certified by the EPA, I hear is making the rounds up in Washington, because if we're going to ask for the kind of support we need for infrastructure, we need a number. And so we've got the number. So lastly, this is the question I get asked all the time. When are we going to see it look better? When do we see results? Well, I'm going to give Mother Nature a lot of credit for what we see now, but I can't deny, as a scientist and somebody who's been here 40 years, that we are not seeing the results of the hundreds of millions of dollars and hundreds of projects that have already been implemented. They go hand in hand. That's not to say that if we get 5 days of rain next week, we might not be in another harmful algal bloom that is extensive. We are on that edge, and we are going to be on that edge for a number of years, if not a decade, so we need to keep pressure on this. But the honest answer is that I can't tell you when we turn that curve to a healthy lagoon, but I can tell you with 100% scientific assurance that if we don't make these investments now, this system gets worse, and the $7.6 billion of value goes down as we start losing these assets. Partnerships are absolutely incredible, and I want to thank you for your long-standing partnership and support of our program. Private sector involvement is going to be important as we move forward. We have a lot of activities at individuals, so feel free to call me or email me if you want to engage. And then lastly, we need to continue to communicate the good news. The fact that we are making progress, we are investing, we are fully engaged in clean water. And you can find reports of this. You have our annual report, but we just finished a 5-year full audit, programmatic audit from the EPA called the performance evaluation. And that is online with all the support documents if you want to see the last 5 years wrapped up into a performance report. So with that, I'll end and just say thank you again and look forward to doing work with you as we move forward.
Dr. Lamise, on behalf of the Port Authority, that we are happy to continue to work with you in the restoration program. It's great to hear that Brevard Zoo is now involved in the whole project. Let me ask you, is there one portion of the system that is where seagrasses are doing better than in others, or is it pretty much up and down the entire system?
So this is where we're seeing an interesting, so if you're out fishing and you see these massive acreages of green, you're not looking at seagrasses, you're looking at macroalgae. It's called Caulerpa. It's got a little paddle. It's a good thing, so it's taking place, it's stabilizing sediment, but the problem with macroalgae is that it churns nutrients quicker than seagrasses, and it can fail quicker. So if we get super high temperatures and rains, we'll watch that disappear within a week, and then we'll probably flush back into algal blooms. So the reports that I'm seeing and the documentation of photographs is that we're seeing a pretty good rebound of seagrasses around the inlets, and some of that's water flow and flushing, but I'm also seeing it in places that I would not have imagined. So I had a couple of industry leaders, and we had lunch over at River Rocks in Rockledge just this last week, and I went out and checked, and we have seagrasses growing right by that University of Florida's clam culture site. So we have Syringodium, one of the 7 species, starting to pop up right there. And that's an east, it's a shoreline that gets that east wind. And so I am encouraged that given a chance, seagrasses will slowly come back, but it is going to be slow. They can only expand with root expansion, so vegetative root, growth, seed production, which is pretty rare with our species, and also fragments. When you have a wind event, you'll see them blow up on the shoreline. And so we are not expecting this to be a quick recovery for seagrasses. But we're going to track that, and luckily we've got people monitoring at the Water Management District on a regular basis.
But is there an area where the seagrasses are doing better than in others? Or is it pretty consistent in the entire system?
I really can't say that because we don't have that kind of good coverage. So you would imagine at the inlets where we've got kind of incoming, outgoing tide, you've got a lot more capability for good water clarity. But we're seeing, and hearing reports of seagrasses popping up in Banana River. First time in 10 years we've probably seen good seagrass, but it's patchy. And it's also very sparse. So you don't have that density. And that's going to be the challenge of these nurseries. It's going to be a supply chain challenge. So very much an economic issue. Once we have nurseries and we have, let's say, 300,000 plants ready to go, we're going to need to have certain criteria in place to decide where to plant to get the highest and best, response. And so all of that work is happening right now with our science community. Brevard County Sorrel Program, which, and I need to say this, if we didn't have the Save Our Indian River Lagoon half-cent sales tax in Brevard County, I don't think I'd have much hope for the future of this system. We are going to see over $500 million over 10 years delivered to nutrient reduction. You know, that is our key to success, and thanks to Brevard County citizens, we're moving forward. But this is going to be a heavy lift. There's no question, you know, we're going to learn a lot about seagrasses and replanting along the way. Tomorrow I'm going to be at Satellite Beach. They've got a site right, you know, on the, you know, western side of Sampson's Island. And they were showing after their first planting somewhere between 5 and 30% success. One of the big challenges, of course, as soon as you put the salad buffet out, every manatee, every pinfish, every green sea turtle wants to, you know, go eat. And so some of our failures have been that, you know, we're putting an expensive salad buffet out to those herbivores that want to eat grass.
Okay, any comment?
I just have one question. You mentioned the half-cent sales tax. Are any of the other counties doing the same? Are they as invested as Brevard is?
To my knowledge, there's probably no county in the United States that's at the investment level of Brevard. So Indian River County commits a portion of their half-cent sales tax to specific projects, and year to year they decide. Some of those projects have been Indian River Lagoon oriented. They try to do at least one or two. St. Lucie County 2 years ago passed a half-cent. Their half-cent is dedicated more towards infrastructure, but anytime you build a new road or you do a new stormwater project for flooding, you get the benefits, you know, of that better engineering and design to the lagoon. But you know, right now Brevard is the only dedicated revenue source specifically for lagoon restoration.
Dwayne, great. Thanks for the update today, and great to see you. Let me ask, though, again, like we talked a little bit beforehand, a lot of money has been spent, and I appreciate the broad brush of all the options that you have, this whole system that you're working on. But at the end of the day, you know, we can keep removing muck, and that's what we do. And I happen to live where I get to watch a whole lot of muck moved and canals dredged and all that sort of stuff again and again. We got to stop putting stuff in it. We've got to get the stormwater piece. We got to get those big picture, very expensive. Where's the voice, or who's carrying that flag loudly? I mean, who's really? Come on. I mean, what's the most impacting thing that we can do that we've got to do better? I mean, there's that side to this.
Yeah, there's a few of us carrying that voice. We just did a big event at Florida Tech last week, you know, with the Brevard IRL Coalition. You know, it's hard to handle 6 counties and communicate to the general public, 1.6 million. For the most part, I'm on the street again doing this a lot, especially at the funding side. Virginia Barker at Brevard County. We've got, you know, Keith Winston in the zoo. Everybody has kind of come into the same message. But Commissioner, you are absolutely right. First and foremost, we have to stop the nutrients and pollutants and sediment that are coming from the sources. The Sorrel program changed in year 2 or 3, and actually moved dollars over to the wastewater side that were in muck dredging. I have to tell you though, when you look at the science, the big bang for the buck is muck dredging really can take a lot of nutrients and sediments out of the system. But it's true, to do that without, you know, stopping what's coming in, you know, it's like pushing on a balloon. And so the key is to try to do as much as we can when we can with the dollars, and very often those dollars are specific to the application. So stormwater dollars run one direction, wastewater another.
Who's carrying the septic to sewer?
I think we're all carrying septic to sewer.
Okay, but when is it going to? I mean, over in Cocoa, I mean, there's still thousands of homes on septic, and there's no movement anywhere in that city.
And this is why I look at, you know, the aquarium project and go, God, that's going to be transformational. Septic to sewer is incremental. You think about 300,000 septic tanks, and we're going to move from the oldest and the closest to the lagoon back. We're going to be at that for a decade and more. And you can't move septic to sewer unless your sewer system has the capacity to do it. I'll give you one example. Kennedy Space Center, their current wastewater treatment plant, at the Air Force Base basically is old, inadequate, doesn't meet even advanced wastewater treatment. So we've actually teamed up with Linda Weatherman at the Economic Development Commission, and we are in right now collecting an active RFP to do a feasibility study on a new wastewater treatment plant to serve Kennedy Space Center. So, dollars drive these projects, and until we get to the dollars, like an Everglades system, we keep plowing away. But,
Thank you.
We are here, so anybody wants me to come speak at any time, I'm available.
And most municipalities, Wayne, do have sewer systems that are doing the job. I know Brevard County does have some new codes that I've experienced in pulling permits that you can't just put a septic tank like you could put a septic tank right on the river. There's setbacks, there's different higher standards of equipment. So a lot of that stuff is changing, but a lot of the municipalities are wanting those dollars, and they're driving a lot of the projects from what I understand it. So, and the fishing community here in Port Canaveral, I know Captain Blair Wiggins, I think, is doing some clam planting like we used to do the oyster planting. So I know that the fishing community here is very interested in what's going on and how they can help. So.
Yeah, the fishing community is incredibly active. Blair Wiggins has teamed with University of Florida at Whitney. I just called this morning and said, how many clams have you guys actually put in the water so far? 15 million and 70% success rate on survival. So, these restoration projects make a difference. And to your point, there's no better time for municipalities to look for infrastructure money than right now. That 1.3 trillion is still kind of trickling through the agencies, and so we are at a historic moment for infrastructure funding that we will not see, at least in my lifetime, again. And so anybody needs to do infrastructure upgrades, now's the time to check where those funds are, because there's money flowing everywhere.
Doctor, I've lived here my whole life and therefore have seen your efforts illustrated in newspapers, magazines, etc. I just wanted to commend you for how hard that you work and what you do, and to encourage you to continue to reach out to us to the extent that we're able to help. We'll certainly exercise those abilities.
Thank you very much. You've been an amazing partner. I actually showcase you as one of our best partners everywhere I go. It's amazing, but almost every NEP has got a port associated with it. Mobile Bay, San Francisco Bay, and so the National Estuary Program port connection is deep on a national level. So thank you.
Any other comments? Thank you, Dr. DeFries, for being with us. I appreciate the
Thank you.
update.
Thank you.
Next is CEO report, Captain Murray.
Good morning, everyone. Okay, we'll jump right in. Give a quick cruise update. Numbers have been strong. We've had 548 ships since October through May. Almost 2.5 million multi-day passengers have moved through the port. We also received another nomination this year as the top 10 best cruise ports in the world by Global Traveler magazine. Special events, the Disney Wish arrived on June 20th. She's going to be replacing the Disney Dream on the 3- and 4-day itineraries, Mondays and Fridays. Maiden voyage will be July 14th. The ship is in port today, and we'll be doing some different types of cruising up until the 14th for some of their dignitaries, etc. We also have the Norwegian Getaway back. She was a port of call vessel that was sailing out of New York. The vessel has now been deployed to Port Canaveral for the summer season. She arrived on the 27th this week, and she'll be doing 7-day itineraries. And I can say the ship has been, for a last-minute addition to the port, the ship is sailing very, very strong on passenger counts. So we're really glad to have the ship back, and it looks like a successful summer for Norwegian Cruise Line. We also have the Clean Canaveral in and out of port now. That's the new LNG bunker barge that'll be supplying for Disney, and it's a gray barge. You'll see her in and out. Sometimes she goes out and anchors offshore while the ship's not here, but she's conducted 2 bunkerings already, and I think we have 2 LNG bunkerings scheduled for this Saturday at the same time. So that'll be a first. On cargo side, numbers have been strong, 266 ship calls. We've got a lot of freight that can come here, but it's not right now because we have to improve some of our facilities, et cetera, and we're working very closely with our cargo partners to look for the next steps. Our revenue's at $8.8 million. That's tracking well ahead of budget, and our cargo tonnage is at 4.3 million tons. We've been working very closely with SpaceX. They provided a handful of us a private tour of their Roberts Road facility and Launch Pad 39A. That picture there on the right is actually up in the tower where the astronauts board the space capsule when they fly. So it was an interesting trip. We also had the CSL Argosy here on June 13th, discharged more than 30 tons of granite for the Brightline construction project that I've mentioned in previous meetings. And there's another ship scheduled shortly to come in with even more. So we'll be continuing to support that project through the summer. In a communications update, we've got a lot of broadcast media on the Disney Wish arrival. All the local media has covered it. It's also had 272 million reached globally on social media. And Steve can tell you what that means, but apparently that's a number that nobody has. It's just getting a lot of media attention, the ship. We also have, in the last 30 days, we've increased engagement in all platforms, over 2 million reached globally, and I was told this week that Instagram number being over 10,000 is significant. We're now verified. We're now a verified member in Instagram. So some of you may know what that means. I don't, but it's good.
Verified member of
Instagram.
Oh, okay.
You have to make 10,000 followers to get that status. So there you go.
Another feather in our hat then.
On the federal side, we had a great meeting here on Monday. It's called the PAWSA, Port Awareness and Waterways Safety Assessment for Port Canaveral. It's underway. It's a high priority project for the Coast Guard and Port Canaveral, and its purpose is to ensure the safe vessel transits concurrent with launch operations. As you may recall, we had an incident recently where the Harmony of the Seas deviated into the safety zone slightly. They scrubbed the launch, and we spent some time with the Coast Guard and said, what can we do to make this easier on the ship traffic? We've got other vessel traffic, fishing vessels, a lot of traffic in and out of the port. And these safety zones, some of them were drafted back in the 1950s. Maybe they don't need to be as large as they are with the new rockets and the risk factors for the new ones versus the old ones. So we're working really closely to see how we can tighten up these lines and maybe create some sort of safety fairways where vessels have a rendezvous point coming into the port, and that's always out of the safety zone so that we don't have any of these types of incidents again. So we're working very, very closely. This is a government process. It's managed by the Coast Guard, multi-steps requiring port users and stakeholder input. And we had the initial meeting this past Monday, and we had representatives from cargo, cruise, energy sector, commercial space was here, recreational and commercial fishing. We had Space Force, BCSO, everybody was here, and the Coast Guard laid out what needs to be developed so that we can have the formal meeting, which will take place on September 8th and 9th. The Coast Guard will then assess safe access routes for vessel traffic and improve safety, mitigate risk in waterways, and improve public sector coordination cooperation. This is a large partnership we have with the Coast Guard, and Captain Mark Vaughn, who is the captain of the port, was very instrumental in taking this project, which when it first was named a project, it was somewhere in the list of 20. We got it elevated all the way to #1 thanks to his help. So this is a big project for us. It's a big project for the space industry and the Space Force to have some definition so that we can all operate concurrently in Port Canaveral and not have any other incidents. On the federal side, just government relations update, the House Armed Services Committee is considering bill language right now to provide Coast Guard authority for autonomous space vessel operations. That was our space partners pushed that one out there, and Coast Guard is hopefully going to have more authority over that. We also are talking with the House P&I Coast Guard Maritime Transportation Committee staff to broaden the Coast Guard's authority in the Coast Guard reauthorization bill. So once again, we're working very closely with the Coast Guard and some of the initiatives they have in DC. On the state side, the state update, the budget was signed by the governor on June 2nd, $109.9 billion, a record budget for the state of Florida in the amount of money. It fully funds our FDOT programs for 22 and 23, work program at $11.7 billion for the Department of Transportation. Of that, it includes $135.9 million for seaport infrastructure development enhancements, and we'll obviously be party to some of those funds when they become available after the 1st of July. Last week, state and local support grants were announced. This is $175 million out of the General Revenue Fund, and this is the second distribution of the state's allocation from the federal coronavirus recovery money that came out earlier in the year. We're reviewing potential projects for application. It's a June 15th date, and it's not limited to highway or construction type projects. There's a couple things that we're looking at that might qualify. So we have up until July 15th to make some submissions. The port also hosted the Space Coast Transportation Organization's annual staff retreat, and that was also part of a land and water tour of the port for those folks, which was very nice. Now, I might get the names wrong, but I'm going to do my best. So if you would please stand up. We have 4 interns for our summer internship program. First one I'd like to introduce is Noah Andronescu. Close?
Yes.
Good. Okay. He's attending Florida Atlantic University, and Noah's got the unique fact that he was in the first Helm program at Rockledge High School.
Awesome.
Great.
So congratulations, Noah. Next is Caitlin Faust, engineering. She's attending the Florida Institute of Technology. I spent a little time with Caitlin. She's pursuing 2 degrees. She's her undergrad and her grad at the same time, master's at the same time. So she's here with us and working in engineering. Alyssa Greco, she's our human resources intern this summer. She attends the Massachusetts Maritime Academy, and she will cycle through various departments through the summer and learn what we do as a port. And then last is Felicity Janzuski. Did I get it right?
Yes.
Close, okay. She is with our public safety team, and Felicity graduated from Mass Maritime already, and she's now working on her master's degree at University of Massachusetts in Lowell. So thanks for all standing and being recognized, and we're really happy to get our...
Thank you very much.
We're happy to have our intern program back online again. It's a great group, and I encourage you, if you had a few minutes to say hello, you should, because they've got some interesting stories. Okay, on the recreation side, this Saturday we have Smoke on the Water, Fire in the Sky, starts at 5 p.m., Exploration Tower on the Lawn. Tickets for VIP viewing are available online, and we'll have the traffic and parking details on the port website, social media. That may be up already. Steve says no, it'll be up today. There will be a parking plan and traffic plan for the event. Also, Jetty Park has been doing well. The summertime campground occupancy is at 75%. That's high for the summer. Usually we're not quite that high in the summer months. The beach has been very busy, averaging 400 cars a day, and the park will be open for was open for 5 rocket launches in June. When I say it was open, we opened it for special hours because the launches were when the park is normally closed. So we did that. Also, Red Snapper season is July 8th and 9th, 2022. We'll have traffic and parking details for that also on the port website. And as we've done for the past several years, we'll have the overflow parking in front of the Maritime Center if the parking area fills up down by the boat ramps. Public safety, we're conducting hazardous ID at Port Canaveral, monthly review of all our port facilities just to make sure we're storm ready. Also includes recommendations for minimizing risks, and we had the June 1st heavy weather meeting with the Coast Guard and port stakeholders here in the commission room. There's also a federal port security grant that is out there. We've offered 2 projects in, and I don't know when we'll hear back on those, but they're small projects, but we do this every year when the grant funding comes available. And the last slide is the arrival of the Disney Wish. So that's my report. Any questions?
Captain Murray, what would you say is the average passenger count on the ships that are going out now?
We're averaging, right now, we're at 100% on most of the ships, not all of them, but most of them are getting close to 100% double occupancy.
That's great.
Numbers have been very strong. The Norwegian Getaway came in, she's almost 100% right now, and I think there's one voyage is actually over 100% already, which is unusual to get the ships that full on such a short notice, because it was planned to be in Europe for the summer, so it was a real switch in operation for NCL. So everybody's doing well right now. Ships are
Better than it was a year ago.
a lot better than it was a year ago. So anyway,
Questions for
no other
Captain
questions,
Murray?
I'll pass it to Mr. Poole.
Okay. Next, financial matters by CFO Michael Poole.
Thank you. Good morning.
Morning.
So we're 8 months into our fiscal year. The numbers we'll be going over are through the end of May. So that's 2/3 of our year that's gone by that I'll be reporting on, and I'm going to dovetail into some of John's comments as well. So at a high level, revenues are $78 million. That's $6 million above budget. Expenses at $31 million are $1.6 million below budget. So those 2 variances are the way you want to track. Specifically just on revenues for the full 8 months, cruise represents $60 million of that. It's almost $4 million above budget. You see the calls there, that's total calls, that's home port, that's port of calls, that's technical calls at that 2.4 million passengers. That 11.8 million that cargo is generating, that's 3.1 million in that are tenants that are cargo related, that they pay in lease fees, and then it's port related fees, tariff related fees. So tariff related fees of 8 million, those cargo tenants pay $3 million in rent, all in, that's 11.8 million. And that represents 1.6 million above our budget number, and that's over 4 million tons of cargo that we'll be discussing. Recreation, again, strong, 634,000 above budget. Here, this is a snapshot just of May only. You'll see that we budgeted, wait a minute, let me go back. We budgeted 9.7 million. It came in at 11.7. We're almost 1.9 million above. Chairman Allender, to your question, that which is how are the ships going out? Are they? And John mentioned at 100%. You'll see that out of our 6 segments of business there, that top one, cruise. You'll see that positive budget variance, 351,000 above our forecast. If you look at all 8 months, the first 3 months of the year, we budgeted 50% of double occupancy levels. We made those numbers. In January through September, we pushed it up to 75%. We didn't meet it in January and February. March, we came very close to meeting that number. The last 2 months, we've actually exceeded that. So we're exceeding that 75%, as John indicated. When you add it all up, we're approaching close to 100%. Some of the lines are above 100%. Some are in like the low 90s if you average it out. Yeah, we're starting to hit our numbers.
Last month wasn't cruise revenue below what was budgeted?
I went back and looked at it. Actually, in April, we did exceed it. I thought May, when I briefed you earlier, that May was the first month we actually beat that 75% target. It was the second month we did it. We did it in April, and we've done it in May.
Fantastic.
So
Fantastic so far this year.
Yes, sir. So those are the 6 segments of our business, and you see all of them are exceeded the budget. Specifically, cargo is strong. Leases exceeded that budget number. If you recall, last month you approved a new lease with Blue Origin on the north side of the port, and that's contributing to that
I know it's
positive
a little early.
variance.
How is it doing this month?
Same.
For June?
Similar, very similar. We're tracking June is similar to May.
But you anticipate it would exceed the budget?
We think so, yes. While the some of the vessels, like the Dream, has gone away and it won't be replaced by the Disney Wish until the middle of July. However, that's being offset by the Getaway, the NCL Getaway that's coming in. That came in on Monday. So, yeah, we think it's going to be very close.
So then August, we expect to have very favorable revenues.
Yes.
I have a meeting in July.
Yeah, in July. And so at the August 17th board meeting, we might not have the full July numbers, but we will have July revenue numbers. And yeah, so we expect 10 months worth of data that it should follow on those same trend lines.
Great, fantastic.
So this is just showing you the year-to-date numbers here, all in $6 million. Yes, cruise is below overall, but you'll see that's being offset by the parking dollars. Cargo is very strong as well. And speaking to cruise, at almost $60 million, we budgeted $56 million. That's $4 million above budget. Now on pure passenger ships, not counting technical calls, that's 467 home port calls. It's 55 porta calls. For the month of May solely, we had 67 calls, 383,000 passengers. You see the split between home port and porta calls. We had 10 home ported ships using all 6 of our terminals. And you're going to see Carnival, they had 2 of their ships at Cruise Terminal 3. They had 2 at Cruise Terminal 6. Royal Caribbean had the Harmony and the Independence at Cruise Terminal 1. Now when we finish the dock improvements, the berth improvements over at Cruise Terminal 5, we were able to move the Mariner from Cruise Terminal 1 over to 5. And you see Disney has its 2 ships at Cruise Terminal 8, and last but not least, our 6th terminal there is the MSC Divina. Now, if we fast forward a month from now, we're going to be showing that Norwegian Cruise Line, the Getaway, is also using Cruise Terminal 10. So all of our cruise assets, all the terminals, they're being optimally used. And if we, you'll see with Cruise Terminal 10, if we to maximize it out, we put as many brands in there as we can. So next, it'll be MSC, it'll be Norwegian Cruise Line. So
in the future, we might need some more terminals.
yes, we're going to have to. You'll see that in the long-term plan. So when we present the capital budget to you in August for FY23, you're going to see some long-range planning, not just cruise terminals, but you're going to see cargo terminals as well. So. Yeah, so I'll speak to a little bit more of that on the cargo side here. On cargo, that 11.8 million, it's 1.6 million above budget due to 4.3 million tons of cargo. That's 783,000 or 22% above prior year. Why? That's fuel and it's lumber. You can see that how much it's outpacing or ahead of pace from the prior year. Fuel alone is over 50% of our total cargo base here, and that goes to the local airports and it's used in the regional area as well. But when you combine the lumber, the slag, the limestone, and granite all together, that represents 1.7 million tons. What is that? That's 40% of our total cargo base, and that's used to support the regional construction market. So just like I mentioned last month and how we're becoming berth constrained, and that's why it's so critical to bring North Cargo Berth 3 online, why we're applying for federal money on North Cargo Berth 4, it's to support that main segment of business here. We do not want our customers to have to turn away business, and so we need to expand. So in addition to our cruise facilities, we're having to expand our cargo facilities as well. We're very targeted on how we do our expansion. For example, North Cargo Berth 8, that was not a rehabilitation of an existing berth, it was a brand new berth. And if you look out there, when we built that, $20+ million, one day you might have a lumber ship there that's offloading. It's a multi-purpose berth. The next day you might have a SpaceX ship there. The next day you may have a Porta-Call ship there. So it's to maximize all of our assets. We put many different segments of business there.
Mike,
I'm sorry.
Porta calls. Do you know specifically how many porta calls are going to be in the next 2 or 3 months? Or do some show up unexpectedly or last minute?
No, we pretty much have them all scheduled down. Scheduled, yes, they're on there. I mean, we might get some unannounced for various reasons, but no, the protocols are normally scheduled with us well in advance.
Okay.
I wanted to just address on this slide, the increase in fuel revenue is due to just an increase in volume. I know I've said that before, but just with gas prices as high as they are, I want to make sure it's clear to the public that our rates are the same. This is an increase in volume, not us pumping up people's gas prices.
That's exactly right.
Thank you.
Commissioner Hadaway, yeah, and it's just tied to consumption, right? We're just a pass-through here. We're the conduit to get it to its end destination.
Thank you.
The last segments of our business, when you combine leases, recreation, and our miscellaneous revenues at 6.8 million, that's 543,000 above budget. You see leases, Jetty Park, and our miscellaneous revenues are all either at or near budget or above budget. And this just wraps up revenues. That shows you that $6 million is over 8% above our budget number. On expenses, out of our 14 departments, it's 1.5 million below budget or 4.8% below. We have 6 departments of our 14 that are above their budget number, so we'll have to do some budget transfers. We'll do those at the beginning of October, and we'll report that at the October board meeting. And to wrap it up here, revenues are at 78 million when you take into account the expenses and your interest expense. You have a positive income before depreciation of 39 million, factoring in depreciation and your non-operating revenues, which are the ARPA monies that we get on a monthly basis to the tune of it's a very even amount every month. That produces an income of $30 million. And when you factor in the capital contribution, the grants that we receive from the federal government, from the state government related to North Cargo Bird 3, you add that to the existing income item of 30 million, that produces that change or increase in net position of 43 million, and that ties into your income statement that's in your package. That's
How far along are you and your staff for figuring next year's budget?
how
How far
far.
along are you? We're about to,
So, Mr.
we
Chairman,
haven't started that yet.
yeah, Mr. Chairman, we've started that process. We have Pat that's already working on the revenue side. Diana is working on our operating budget, which is working with those 14 departments. Bill is working on the capital budget. And so the goal is to take that for preliminary approval, as we always do, to the August 17th board meeting for that initial approval, then goes for final approval at the September board meeting. So to answer your question, we have started it already.
Well into it. Okay,
Well
thank
into
you.
it.
Any questions for Mr. Poole? Thank you, Mike. Good report. Next item, consideration of accepting the financial memos for May 2022 and the statistical reports. Mr. Hadaway, you're going to take those all at one time?
I will, well, I wanted to make a quick note
Come on.
that
Okay.
lest anyone think I pick on one person in particular, the legal bills are different than when you may have first looked at the agenda. One of the firms has pulled one of theirs, so if anybody wants to take a look at that. As in your packet, I move to accept the financial memo for May 2022, the statistical report, the aging report, and the list of bills, and move to approve the list of disposals, the legal bills, and commissioner expenses for May 2022.
Okay, do we have a second to the
Second.
motion? Any discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Thank you. Did that include 4 also? The legal bills,
Yes,
okay,
I did all 3 of those together.
okay. Next item. Capital Projects Update by Bill Kroll.
Morning, Mr. Chairman. Morning, Commissioners. Thank you for the opportunity to give you an update on our capital projects. First off, I wanted to piggyback on what Captain Murray shared about the quality of interns that we have this summer. Every summer is a great summer for our intern program. Even many of our existing employees were former interns at one time, so they think that's a great testament. But we have a group of 4 fine young professionals this year, and I'm particularly biased toward the engineering candidates, but nonetheless, they're a great group. So with that said, I'm going to move into the engineering project update. Going to start with cruise terminal number 6. That is 50 additional parking spaces that we've added in what was previously designated as a commercial expansion area. And that project is complete. You see the asphalt there. We're going to be striping it this week or next and then putting it into use. So very good, great idea on Captain Murray's behalf and great repurposing of that area. Our largest project that we have under construction right now is North Cargo Berth 3. That's with Rush Marine. All of the 178 A-frame piles have been driven out, and we're approaching that 50% mark of the A-frame cap. So you see some of the workers there tying rebar cage for the A-frame cap. On the relieving slab, the relieving platform, we've driven over 50% of those square precast concrete piles. So 197 of those 356 concrete piles have been driven. And then the main bulkhead wall, the combi wall that we call it, we've started to take delivery of the king piles, and I've got a great aerial image here, and I'm going to kind of show you around the site. So the king piles that we've had delivered, they're all stockpiled in this area, and you can kind of see the tops are coated. That will be sticking above the mud line. Those king piles are going to be driven nominally 10 feet in front of that existing bulkhead in this alignment. It'll wrap around the corner about 100 feet. Once they drive the king piles, they'll come back and drive the infill sheets in between them. That new combi wall will then be tied back at each king pile with a heavy steel threaded rod to the A-frame cap. So this is the top of those A-frame piles that have been driven. You can see the concrete cap that's already been cast on the A-frame piles, and this was that area of rebar. So great progress is being made on that project, and we're grateful for all of the grant funding partners that we have on North Cargo Berth 3. And one note, we do have the Army Corps of Engineers O&M dredger, Dutra, working in the offshore channel, and that is a good reminder to the project and our contractor, and Tony Landry, I saw him in the audience earlier, that Dutra is going to be doing the project-related dredging for North Cargo Berth 3. So we have a little over 100,000 yards of material that need to be removed from this area, and that will happen roughly in September when the Army Corps of Engineers dredger, Dutra, is closer to this area. So we're looking forward to having that done.
To make the point, it's tied. You got to get ready. Got to be ready to do that.
Exactly. The pressure is on, and now it's public. So yeah, he's got to have that combi wall fully installed along this alignment, and it will be tied back. The cap will be completed, and that's got to happen by sometime in September, so that the wall will be stabilized, so they can remove all the material that's in the front here. So, and I think I saw the Chris Wren, our project manager with the Army Corps of Engineers, is also in the audience. So we're grateful for the Corps' partnership and all the activities we have going on here at the port. And Chris is also just a great guy to work with. So many of you recall we did finalize the settlement with the Exploration Tower early this year with the general contractor, Skanska. The subcontractor, Kenpat, and a subsidiary of Kenpat, NRG Cladding, they are in the process getting ready to mobilize to actually effect those repairs. So this tower was originally completed back in the 2012-2013 era, so about a decade later, we're grateful to see this repair come to fruition. Their project plans have satisfied all of the requirements of the Florida Building Code, and we've issued them a permit. We did hold the project pre-mobilization conference on the 23rd. They've got some minor testing procedures that they're doing this week, and they'll have it wrapped up by the weekend. One of those procedures is that they need to test the sediments in the front of the tower at the base of the pond, because one of their first activities is to cast some concrete mats, submerged concrete mats. And then they're going to spend a few weeks erecting a scaffolding system over the entire face of that sail wall. So you'll start to see this scaffolding system grow and climb that southern face of the tower. It's supposed to be done by February 2023 is our completion date, and you'll see a lot of work activity around the tower starting after the July 4th weekend.
Bill, will the tower be totally closed during that period?
It will be, yeah, it will be. There's just going to be a lot of cranes and overhead work in the area. It's not going to be a safe situation to have the public there, so we're going to have it roped off, fenced off, so it'll be closed down until February 2023.
Okay.
But it will be open for the July 2nd activities. Just around the horn, we have CT1 gangway cylinder replacement, and that is one of the agenda items that I have on the consent agenda today. Exploration tower repair we covered. Terminal 10 canopy replacement, that is budgeted in FY23. The Terminal 6 garage expansion we covered. Another agenda item I have is some fender replacements for North Cargo Berth 5 through Rush Marine. North Cargo Berth 4 design continues, and we've made great progress strides on North Cargo Berth 3. We're still waiting on pricing to wrap our minds around what we need to do with the Jetty Park Pavilion. Once we make that decision, then we'll be able to right-size the new Jetty Park Camp Store. Both of those projects are budgeted in the draft version of the FY23 budget. South Cargo Pier 1 and 2, we're going to bid that project out in August. Should have it before you for a September award. We're wrapping up the roof repairs on ASI Building 1. Berth box O&M dredging. We're timing that, this is actual material removal dredging, we're timing that to we won't be able to catch this round of the federal O&M dredging contractor, but hopefully the next round, which I believe is going to happen late calendar year 23, we'll be able to work with that dredger in our harbor. Dredgers are just very expensive to mobilize, so it makes sense to coincide that project with the federal work. And then port aerials, we continue to have not the best luck when it comes to cloudless skies. But we do have a great date coming up here on July 9th, date of 6 ships. So we're planning to refly the port aerials on that date. And to Mike Poole's point, we are planning the FY23 budget. It's in draft form, and we have some great public-facing projects that we're really excited about, park-related, roadways-related, and just really looking forward to continuing to get back to work.
Bill, back to Jetty Park Pavilion. When do you have a time frame where you expect to make some present some definite recommendations for that site?
The pricing data, what we had a small purchase order to one of our continuing contract vendors to go and actually open up some of the wood soffit, some of the ceiling areas, and get an idea of the level of wood rot that we had in that facility. We're still waiting on the results of that investigation. We should have them the first week of July, and so over the month of July, we'll be analyzing how much investment we would need to put into that building to bring it up to current standards. Then that's going to help us to make a decision with regards to Florida Building Code, how much what is the value of the building, how much are we able to renovate of it before we trigger certain thresholds and need to bring the entire building up to modern codes, which would be even more expensive. But we certainly want to make it a safe and comfortable place for potential administrative functions of our recreation department. So once we make that decision, likely July, then we'll know what we're going to do with both the pavilion and the camp store.
Those two are sort of tied together in some respects.
Yes.
The camp
Correct.
store and the park pavilion. Thank you.
Thank you.
Now, questions for Bill? You got all flucky. And Bill, I told you I wasn't going to skip you. I did mark my agendas so that I did not forget you today.
I got up in advance.
Even though Commissioner Hadaway was going to remind me that I'd skipped over. Anyway. Next item is consent agenda. There was no cards on the consent agenda. Okay. On the consent agenda, Commissioner Justice, I will begin with you. Do you have any items that you want to have pulled?
Yeah, 1D.
Commissioner Hadaway.
I'm gonna do a Commissioner Markey special and pull 3A for the purpose of abstaining.
Commissioner Markey.
None.
No. And Commissioner White.
I have none.
So then the chair would entertain a motion to approve consent agenda item 1A, 1B, 1C, 2A, 2B, and 4A.
So moved.
Okay, been moved and seconded. Any discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, Commissioner Justice, item 1D.
Yes, Bill, what I'd like you to do is give us 2 minutes on the real scope of this project. And the reason I'm asking for this is because while it's $200K now, this is not the whole project. And this is a transparency thing. The depth and breadth of this and the amount, I just want to make it public and make sure there's an understanding why we're all concerned here, what we're getting into. Thanks.
Absolutely. And thank you for the inquiry. And if I get into the weeds too much, feel free to pull me back out of the weeds. So I apologize ahead of time for that. We, Terminal 1 passenger boarding bridges were manufactured by FMT originally. So they were put into service in 2014. And so they're in that 8-year mark, and they're highly complex pieces of equipment. A lot of custom hydraulic cylinders drive those bridges. And our ability to take them out of service is limited. So what we're doing under this purchase order is we're buying 7 new cylinders, and the magic number 7 is because there are 7 different types of cylinders on each bridge. So 1 spare brand new cylinder will be purchased, it will be installed. That is round 1, and this purchase order covers the purchase and then the installation of that first 7. We're going to have a round 2 and a round 3 likely to work our way all the way through all 24 cylinders that we have between both bridges. So that will consist of the 7 that we remove. We're going to ship those to the factory or to our technician in Tampa, and they'll tear them down and give us an idea of what it's going to cost to rebuild those 7. We'll replace those 7. That would be round 2. Then we'll have a round 3 that will follow a similar course. So I'll likely be coming back to the commission for additional requests to rebuild cylinders and reinstall them. Right now, we don't have a clear picture of what those rebuild costs are going to be. So we've got to get the cylinders taken off and priced up.
Okay, great. I mean, the point again is we got to have both of those bridges working. That's a busy terminal, and
Yes.
that's a critical point of potential failure.
They both
So-
function right now, and we did have a series of down times earlier this spring, late winter, as cruising was coming back, and it was not a comfortable experience because Terminal 1 is where the Oasis class moors up, and so the largest vessel that we have here. So, but both bridges are functioning currently, and we have other improvements planned for these bridges as well. Mind you, the technology that runs them, that controls them, is 8 to 10 years old at this point, so we're looking to do upgrades on the control systems as well in the coming fiscal year budget.
Great, thanks. With that, I'll move for approval of consent agenda item 1 Delta.
Do we have a second?
Second.
It's been moved and seconded for approval of consent item 1D. A discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Okay, it's approved. Item 3A, Commissioner Hadaway.
I need to abstain as my firm represents one of the members of Harbor Square LLC.
Okay. Chair would entertain a motion to approve consent item 3A,
So moved.
Second.
noting Commissioner Hadaway's abstention. Okay,
Thank you.
discussion. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
The consent items are approved. And public comment, we have one card. Mac McLeod, retired commissioner, executive director, et cetera, wants to discuss Exploration Tower.
I'll struggle up there.
Take your time, Mac. Take your time.
I think it was a good time to talk about Exploration Tower a little bit. I was very interested in the report, and it looks like sometime next year we're going to have a corrected tower, and that'll be good. But the question I have is, I think we should be thinking about what to put in it. What we did in the past, I think we can do a lot better than what we did. And I'll just offer some suggestions just to start to get people thinking about it. Here's what I kind of thought about. First off is that I really think we ought to consider making it a 501c3 so people can donate. As a matter of fact, I'll donate the first $1,000 if they actually do that. That would, I think, encourage people like Musk and other people to donate to this thing, and with the possibility that we could make it a paying operation. The thought I had was the creation of exhibits showcasing local innovative success stories. And my thought, some examples that I was just thinking about, first off would be certainly Port Canaveral's development as the second largest cruise port in the world, and how that occurred. I think that's if you got a success story, that's a big deal, because it started out it wasn't even a port. They had to dredge it. So, it was really a spectacular occurrence. But certainly KSC and the U.S. Air Force, Navy, and so forth, their opportunities there, I think, for some types of exhibits that would be of interest to people that would like to come through the Exploration Tower. As we heard, they defreeze given against the lagoon restoration. That itself would be of interest to a lot of people. That they could, and we could and maybe an exhibit of that type.
30 seconds.
30 seconds. Okay, I'm about done. I got, but certainly the commercial satellites, the weather satellites, and so forth. There's just any number of individual exhibit that could showcase innovative success stories, and so that's all I had.
Thank you, Mac.
Beat it, huh?
Thank you.
Okay, Commissioner reports. Mr. Justice.
Yes, we'll run through these quickly. Spent a half a day at the Tourism Transit Summit up at Kennedy Space Center. That was time well spent. Had a chance to speak at 3 different Memorial Day events, 3 different days. Had a real good trip up to D.C. To watch the Coast Guard's change of command. Got to see our President of the United States, take the salute. Admiral Schultz left, and then the First Lady, first female, who's in charge of a military service in our country's history, took over in charge of the Coast Guard. Admiral Linda Fagan took the President's salute, so that was quite something to see. John didn't mention this, but on Flag Day, the local chapter of Rolling Thunder rolled up in here with about 25 or 30 loud motorcycles and presented us a POW MIA flag that we proudly recognized, and then now flies over our port here forever. Just looking ahead real quick, next week I'm going to speak over in Orlando at the Central Florida's Association of Builders and Contractors, so I look forward to that opportunity. That's all I have. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, Commissioner. Commissioner Hathaway.
Nothing today.
Commissioner Markey.
I have none.
Mr. Lloyd.
I do have my 2 daughters back here. I don't know if
They don't
they
seem to be
came
paying attention. Are they both on their phone?
they actually,
One just set it
the
down.
dozing off.
I don't think they think we're very entertaining.
Yeah, I saw.
Why don't you have them stand up? I mean, to really embarrass them as much as you can.
I won't make them stand up, but I did see them dozing off during Michael Poole's presentation. They're here, and then fireworks are this Saturday here at the port. So, Rush Marine has worked with the Cove Merchants, and they're shooting the fireworks off from a barge this year in the middle of the turning basin, which should be a lot better than shooting them off from southern Georgia like we did last year. So it should be a lot better, and I hope to see everybody there.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you, Rush Marine, for doing that.
The meeting is adjourned. Next meeting is August 17th, 9 a.m. Thanks, everybody, for coming.